Good morning. Welcome to News Center Maine's Political Brew. Glad you could be with us. This week we're joined by longtime Democratic activist Betsy Sweet and former Republican State Senator Phil Harriman. Both of you, good to see you.
Good to see you. Hi, Betsy.
A lot to talk about. The politics of vaccine mandates. Two Democrats joined all Republicans in the Senate to overturn President Biden's COVID vaccine or testing mandate for private businesses with 100 or more employees. Senator Susan Collins calls the mandate counterproductive.
So I really don't think the mandate accomplishes the goal.
And says it's more likely to lead people to quit their jobs than to get vaccinated, which is the goal. Now, this is unlikely to become law. So, Betsy, what's the message you take from this vote?
Well, cynically, I've got to say it's the government by, of, and for the corporations. I don't understand. It's a public health emergency. I don't understand why we are not all pulling together to do everything we can. And masking is like the simplest thing. And so if science is showing that that's not helpful, well, then obviously we need to reconsider. But right now, we know it's one of the most effective things to stop the spread. So I don't think it's going to be upheld. But I think, we've got to start caring about each other.
Well, I compliment the Senate for passing this. I agree with Betsy. It's probably not going to end up on the president's desk. And if it did, he would probably veto it. And as we know, there are also challenges in the private sector through the court system, basically saying it's not my responsibility as an employer to force individuals to comply with the mandate. So it is basically saying that we, the employer, should not be the ones enforcing the regulations. It's up to the individual.
The U.S. Supreme Court this past week heard arguments about whether a Maine law violates the U.S. Constitution. It involves public funding for religious schools in Maine. State law says the towns without a public high school will pay tuition for students to attend a school elsewhere, but it says the tuition cannot go to a religious school, and that's the provision that's being challenged. Justices in the conservative majority, Phil, expressed skepticism about Maine's law. How do you think this plays out from what you heard this week?
Yeah, this is fascinating. And if it is upheld by the Supreme Court, this will be a national precedent. The question really becomes, is this discrimination against individuals because of their religious beliefs? The state took the position that no, it's not, because we are agnostic when it comes to teaching religion. So is it an infringement on one's constitutional rights because of their faith? That'll be the key question. And then, at least as I see it, if the court says, yes, you can use public dollars to fund private education in a faith-based school, how far can they go with their religious, teachings? That'll be another part of the question. This will be fun to watch. It's probably going to take about 6 months, though, to get an answer.
Well, and I think the other question, Phil, it's the separation of church and state. It's like that is a fundamental thing of our Constitution. And so using public dollars, as Phil said, to go to schools that have no restrictions either on curriculum or on how much they teach their faith or require kids to follow their faith or any of that stuff, because we don't have that, that's a huge violation, in my view, of church and state. And we're seeing schools, and I think it will, Pat, as you said, it'll go across the country. And, we see schools, religious schools in Texas, I'm not to pick on Texas, but that's where they're happening, saying, they have to, as part of the curriculum, they have to teach both sides of the Holocaust. There's ones that don't believe in evolution, and that's fine to have that as your religious belief. But my God, if we are spending public dollars to put that stuff forward, it's a slippery slope.
Yeah, we'll see how this comes out. There's an election next year, you may have heard. Bruce Poliquin has some primary challengers as he seeks to reclaim the 2nd District seat that's now held by Democrat Jared Golden. At least 4 other Republicans have said they will enter the race. Betsy, do you see any real threats to Bruce Poliquin getting the nomination? And what about any impact of ranked choice voting in that primary?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll leave that to Phil about whether they have any chance. But I just want to say that I am thrilled that there are 4 people in the race. And I think it's because of ranked choice voting. Because we have ranked choice voting, then people who are not part of the machine or unendorsed by the machine or aren't frankly people who are, I'm so tired of recycled politicians in the state, but these new people can get in with a possible chance. If all of those people line up and all those votes are more than Poliquin's, ranked choice voting is going to play a big role. And I think that that's, regardless of what I think about the candidates or anybody thinks about the candidates, the fact that we have a system in Maine that allows people to believe that they can get in and stand a chance is awesome.
And it's interesting, Phil, that Paul LePage is unchallenged in his effort to win the nomination from the Republican Party for governor, and yet Bruce Poliquin is attracting all of this opposition.
Yeah, that's a very interesting observation, Paddock. To your point, I think it clearly indicates that Paul LePage has the support of the heart and soul of the Republican Party. Bruce Poliquin, I think, has got to reintroduce himself in sort of an odd way. These challenges with primary candidates is going to enable him to do just that, to remind people of his values and principles and his leadership style. And what does he bring that's new or a different perspective than the Bruce Poliquin we saw as our second district representative?
This week, Governor Janet Mills mobilized National Guard troops to help hospitals deal with the alarming surge in COVID hospitalizations. And FEMA is sending a federal COVID-19 surge response team to Maine Medical Center. The governor says this is a tipping point for Maine. Betsy, how is she doing with the latest response?
I think she's doing the only thing she can. You know, we hear the horror stories of people with heart attacks and broken bones and surgeries that they need, and people with mental health issues on gurneys in the emergency room that cannot get in because of all the COVID cases. So I feel like she has tried everything. She has tried mandates. She has tried encouragement. She's tried everything. And the hospitals are dying. Aroostook County just closed any elective surgery. You know, we're seeing this happen all over. I don't know what the other answers are unless she involved government in helping the hospitals and, you know, making room for people who have other issues.
Phil, how do you feel about the administration's response?
Yeah, I think she's done the responsible thing. And to Betsy's point, which is spot on, it's probably not as much about the people who've been diagnosed with COVID. The survivability has increased dramatically. So it's not a death watch, so to speak. But more importantly, it's allowing the system to meet the needs of other medically needed procedures that people during the pandemic weren't able to get. So I think she's done the right thing.
The debt ceiling crisis is being averted. The House and the Senate have reached a deal to allow Democrats to go it alone, following a rather complicated path of legislative procedures. Phil, does this show that compromise is still possible, or does it, as some observers have said, simply point out how arbitrary the customs and rules of the Senate really are when it comes to things like the filibuster?
Well, I would describe it, and Betsy would be able to concur with me, that those who understand the parliamentary procedure process can make magic happen. And I think what the Republicans have done is to kind of, give the Democrats the path to raise the debt ceiling so that our checks don't bounce, but they don't want to be part of raising the debt ceiling so they can say, look, I enabled the government to stay open, but I'm not part of taking on more debt.
So this is, Betsy, part of keeping Republican fingerprints off the raising of the debt limit.
I would say, instead of maneuvering, I would say smoke and mirrors. This is unbelievable to me. And the other thing I think it's really important to take from this is when they want to carve something out of the filibuster, they can do it. So they're not doing it for voting rights or access to the ballot box, but they're doing it so they know that they couldn't survive, the whole system couldn't survive a shutdown, financial shutdown. And so they magically find a way to make that happen. But on things that are also really important to Maine and Americans, Maine people and Americans, so somehow that can't happen, but this can. So what I take from it is, it can happen, and we're going to figure out how to make it happen so we assure that fundamental right of voting.
Ambulance services in rural Maine are asking for help from the state to deal with shortages of EMTs and paramedics and rising costs. This has been going on long before COVID, but it's worse now. There's a bill being drafted for the upcoming legislative session that would classify EMS as essential services to unlock more federal money. Betsy, is this system broken? And of course, why would it take so long to say, yeah, as a matter of fact, EMS is an emergency service?
That seems to be like a no-brainer, that EMS is an emergency service and it can unlock some federal dollars. Awesome. But I got to say, Pat, this is yet another example, just like the emergency rooms we were talking about before. Our healthcare system is so broken. We cannot access. It is not about the array of services or how smart we are technologically. Our system is so broken. And until we get a handle on this and get it out of the hands of people who are trying to make money through insurance and stuff and into a comprehensive, coordinated system, we're going to have this. This is one little piece over here, and then we're going to see another one over there. And then, we have it in behavioral health and in the hospitals and in nursing homes. We can't keep doing this whack-a-mole thing to try and fix the system. The system is broken, and we have to fix it in a global way.
It just seems to me that this is a blinding glimpse of the obvious, that we would label emergency personnel as essential. I mean, how come that was even a debate? But, attracting the money from Washington to try to fix this, that's one thing, but we also need the talent. And many of these people who chose not to get vaccinated are now without a job that we're now talking about being an essential service. So I think we all have got to sit down in the same room and make sure that we have an understanding and that the people who protect us, police, fire, and EMS, are given the opportunity, the options, and the respect that they deserve so that we can provide these services.
Washington paused this week to honor Bob Dole, World War II veteran, U.S. Senator, and presidential nominee for the Republican Party, who died a week ago. Mainers will recall that Dole was the Republican leader when Maine Democrat George Mitchell was Senate Majority Leader, and the two were fierce partisans, but were also friends who spoke to each other every day, wouldn't ambush one another in public, and tried to get things done through compromise. Phil, do you think, did the Senate really run better then, or are we just being nostalgic about it?
Well, it's probably a little bit of both, but I think the difference is that era of George Mitchell and Bob Dole was one of the elections are over. I raised my right hand as an American, and my job is to make this place work. And I think what has changed is that the elections are over, and I got to get to my next re-election and then to my party position within the caucus, and then I'll govern as an American. And I think we need to look back to that era of George Mitchell and Bob Dole and revive it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think he was a statesman, and I find it hard to believe that I would laud Bob Dole today. I agree with him on a lot of things, but I think that Phil's exactly right. That we have lost the idea that government officials are service oriented, and that's what this is about. And they have become an election chess game, and that's where 99% of their effort is, and especially in the leadership. That Bob Dole and George Mitchell, occupied, and they were about getting things done. And I think, the first thing that Mitch McConnell said when Biden was elected is, "I have one goal, and that is to stop Biden's agenda." And so, it's just that would never have been said out of Bob Dole's mouth or George Mitchell's mouth, quite frankly. So we've lost a statesman, and he gave incredible service to this country. Even though I disagree with him on most things, it's a sad passing.
Let's wrap up with our winners and losers this week.
My loser this week is Jesse Smollett. That court case proved that his hate crime was a hoax, and we need to get past these behaviors and work on our respect for one another, regardless of your sexual orientation or the color of your skin. My winner of the week is the United States Postal Service. They have done a great job, in my opinion, of communicating with the public how important it is to get your packages in the mail early so that they can arrive on time for Christmas. Good for them.
All right, and Betsy Sweet.
Well, my loser is Mark Meadows, who originally agreed to cooperate with the January 6th investigation committee. And then when it got too close and too hot on the burner, he stopped that. So that's going to put a chink in the ability to get stuff done and find out what really happened on that day. But my winner is the economy. We have this incredible economic news that we are ignoring. It's the lowest unemployment rate since the 1960s. It's the highest growth in GDP. It's over 5-6% this year, and it never got above 3% in the last 10 years. And those are all personal income, disposable income is up 3%, and those are all adjusted for inflation. I know we're worried about inflation, but those are all adjusted for inflation. So there's an economic thing happening here that nobody's talking about. So I think that's my winner for the week.
Betsy, Phil, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it as always. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. News Center Maine returns after this.